People talk a lot about the full on takeover of nation states and other constructs, but oftentimes people fail to give an honest, detailed discussion to ask themselves the serious questions that they need to ask about what it means to protect their mind from outside intrusion. What does it mean in this day and age to not become a robot with pre-programmed ways of speaking and ways of talking? How do we prevent that in the day and age in which people are allowing themselves to become programmed by what's on social media? Now, what happens when social media is completely taken over by nefarious forces, perhaps even outside governments, but I would say in the fine print with the help of our own government? Not everybody's on that wavelength, right? So I don't want to lose anyone as I try to connect the dots in this very simple video, explain to you, the people at home. I'm going to show you some things right now. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's go over here and take a look at these articles that are trending around the world. United States must put a ban on Google helping China develop a global digital dictatorship. And so we are seeing the rise in headlines like this and what could be called confirmations of our worst nightmares. Google's decision to help China is paving the way for Beijing's digital dictatorship. Ultimately, Washington must make a political decision to criminalize such collaboration. Well, it was said about 10 years ago that Huawei was making a move within the United States, spreading its own industry. And we saw their establishment set up with the help of Rick Perry in Plano, Texas. And here we are 10 years later after those warnings. And Huawei has a major 5G monopoly and could eventually hijack, cripple, hack into the US 5G infrastructure. Maybe it's not an accident the whole world is going 5G. And so we're not going to spend all day on this. The other thing that I want to mention is that I think that they use minorities as fronts, from corporations to even social services, to portray some sort of false reality that things have changed, that things are getting better to a certain degree. But ultimately, they're building anger in the people that are saying, you will not replace us. You will not replace us. In a day and age where we're seeing more and more movements like that, controlled opposition movements, it seems that corporations have deliberately moved in certain ways to make it appear as if people are being replaced. Well, we are being replaced by robots, and we are being replaced by the new type of human that they want to emerge. But instead of it being about mixed race, it's really about a merger of technology and biology. And a lot of humans got the warning from people like me years ago. They got the warning, they got the memo, they didn't listen. There's an interview that I did that's one of my most watched. It's about transhumanism with Tom Horn. Tom Horn wasn't talking about an immigrant invasion in that interview, nor were others. The things that are taking place right now are taking place by design to get the people fighting each other like this, so they're easier to control. It's also going to be an easier America to dehumanize, to demonize, and worse, if they can convince enough Americans to embark on a certain direction. And so when you think about how foreign governments, from Russia to China to others, think about elements of our own intelligence agency that works in tandem with other intelligence agencies that, if you will, outsources psyops. It's the idea of psyops being organized and ran in some cases by foreign government cells that have access, backdoor access to platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter to get away with what they're getting away with, and to have the heads of the tech agencies, the websites, in the pocket of the elite, So it's like really dealing with the mafia, if you will. They outsource the blueprints on how to manipulate Americans with our own data, right? They're not doing it alone. The Russians in St. Petersburg didn't do it alone. Plus, the Facebook's already controlled by the CIA. So I've been trying to wake up people within our own alternative media to this, to the reality of the new world order in a day and age where a lot of them have heard about the NWO before. I mean, they heard George W. Bush say it in 1991, New World Order. But is that idea crystallizing yet in the hearts and minds of the people in the so-called research community? Okay, they're going to play up the Chinese threat because that plays into the hands of nationalism, us versus them. Understanding there's a Chinese threat isn't necessarily waking up. So you're going to see publications like this. Let's go back. I want to make sure that we covered this because this has kind of been lingering for a while. And just like with the information that I'm sharing with you about the solar flares, this is information that is also validating of years and years of warnings to you. From me to you here on this channel. When Google's boss sits down with a top U.S. military official on Wednesday, the conversation will likely center on Google's presence in China, in particular, a lab that may be more trouble for the company than it's worth. And so we have this individual, Sundar Pichai, and he's been seen a number of times. There was also the social media Senate hearings where they said that Colorado, Virginia, and Florida were hit with more fake Sharia law invasion related news than the other 50 states. I'm one of the few to bring this to your attention. That means that those people that live in Colorado, Virginia, and Florida have come across more people under the spell. And I know you know what I mean. But some of you haven't actually walked in the shoes of those of us that live lives that could be complicated as a result of the illusions of separation propaganda that has taken this nation by storm. And it really exploded after 2015 and 2016. And what I see is a Google and a Facebook and a YouTube and a Twitter that has collaborated with all different types of questionable interests that are invested in turning us against each other. And there's many, many financial and technological middle bots, if you will, robots and programs between the actual originators of the propaganda and those that are delivering it. I mean, there's a whole chain of command that isn't being seen by the people of this world that are concerned about our future, concerned about our society, and they're looking in the direction of AI, but they're not looking close enough at the global new world order. So Google has been assisting China in AI, and AI can be instrumental in a World War III situation, where years ago I would read articles to you about China having the technological backbone and ability to hack into the US robot army that DARPA is building. Why build then such a robot army like something at a Terminator that China can so easily hack? And so this is being brought out in the open now, and I think at a time that we're getting even closer. Read about China's plan to dominate AI. And so I would be called a kook and other things for talking about China before it was cool. And now all of this stuff is coming out to get people ready for World War III, but it's not educating people about how so much of this is set up by design. And we are literally seeing things on the timeline as we approach 2020 and the rollout of 5G awaits. And we look at the potential of, again, we talk about the outsourcing so they can kind of cover their tracks, if you will, the outsourcing of particular types of operations, even directed energy weapons of the mind, on the mind, coming from overseas. You know, for years, and I always thought there was an agenda to this, there was a lot of focus on HARP, and then some more HARP. But HARP is not the only facility. Boy, this video is going to be flagged. HARP is not the only facility that is out there. There are facilities in China and or Russia. China and Russia have been allied for years on a military level against the United States. Meanwhile, they shake hands and say, everything is going great with trade relations. Well, we have a trade war. Everything is going great. Come here, Donald Trump. Come here, Zeke. Come here, Putin. Let's all do a group. Get in here, Kim Jong-il. We love you now, too. Come on. Let's all do a group picture. And the world's like confused by this. The world's totally confused by this behavior. Doesn't understand how to interpret it. The fool looks at that and goes, hey, look, they're all getting along. What? World War III. War and U.S. imperialism is not partisan and limited to the Democrats. That's a ridiculous concept. It's a bipartisan conspiracy, if you will, to dominate the Middle East and to arm up foreign governments. I'm not an expert on this, but there's everything that we know that's out there in plain sight. We have IBM and China, and that historically being seen as something that helped China get up to a certain point. I mean, it was only so many years ago that China was dealing with its revolution and the rise of Mao Zedong. But if we roll back the pages of time, and this is what an advanced documentary, way beyond Fourth Horse Rising, would get into, it would show a history of Western infiltration of China in the beginning through the British Opium Wars that took place, British-Chinese Opium Wars, really the forcing of a drug upon a population. And then we look at things that have happened within our own society, the rise of the police state, the rise of prisons, as all these forms of dope hit the streets in the 1980s. Hello, 21 Jump Street. I get entertained by 1980s and early 1990s cops and robber nostalgia because it's so entertaining. Some of it's so ridiculous. Some of it could be a little bit cool, but it's there's so much propaganda that there is a little bit of humor, especially when you're looking at an episode of 21 Jump Street and Johnny Depp is busting a guy for selling a $200 bag of marijuana. And I'm laughing going, and now Colorado dispensaries have finally got it down to $80, 80 to 120. And it's just amazing how we can look at something like pop culture that's there to popularize the police state, but pop culture can then 20 years later, you see what I'm going with this, 30 years later, can also be then used to serve up ads for marijuana dispensaries. Those concepts in of themselves, that example right there shows you how insane the society is. And so this is an insane asylum society that likes to be automated to a certain degree. And there's extreme danger in that. And so they made it really cool and hip to automate certain things, including our relationships, one-stop shopping. And then we entered this Facebook industrial complex, and it was cool for a while, and then it got strange. This whole time, I've been imagining foreign governments looking at our foreign messages or our private messages, foreign governments, intelligence agencies where work has been outsourced by elements of the shadow government within our own government, outsourcing certain things. So certain things are coming from the outside, but they're really controlling China. They're really controlling Russia. To be viewing China, Russia, North Korea as outside constructs just because they're not with the U.S.-Israeli alliance on the front, that's a fallacy to then see them as outside the world order system. And that's the fast food McDonald's version of the World War III divide, as presented by the InfoWars and the AMTVs and the others that use terms like deep state that are showing that they have fallen for the trap of seeing like a good side and a bad side of the U.S. government operations. I mean, there may be some good elements. I want to call them white hats or some other buzzword term also used by Project Camelot, who's pushed tons of fake news. I would just refer to them as people that we don't know and we don't see. But it's not going to come in the form of Julian Assange or even maybe a Snowden or what was that girl's name? Reality Check or Reality Factor? She worked for the NSA. There wasn't a lot of information about her. In fact, her story went away really quickly. Maybe we should get back to her story and take a look at exactly what it was that she was saying. I also think that that whole thing was clearly staged. The Robert Mueller FBI conspiracy investigation on Trump Russia collusion. And so it really takes people in. People are really taken in by the propaganda. And they're going, wow, they're really going after Donald Trump. Oh my God. They came after Roger Stone with tanks and stuff. Here's the footage. Even CNN was there conveniently to record it because they had, of course, communication with the FBI. But why, people on the right? Why wouldn't CNN be there? Because they're working in tandem with the real establishment to portray some sort of image that they're coming after Trump. As CG, Christopher Green, E at the end of the end, don't forget that, coming out like trembling, as if he's really having those emotions, as if he's not an actor. Trembling, trembling, trembling. I think they're going to come after Donald Trump next. And then we all know what's going to happen after that, kind of telegraphing as he shows the symbol, right, that there'll be some sort of revolt or response. I mean, how controlled opposition can someone appear? And if he isn't controlled opposition, I mean, it's like if only somebody could get a chance to look into a mirror and see themselves and see what they're projecting. So I say to you that my observation of a number of different people out there, especially guys that are at the top, are telegraphing certain things to program their audience. Instead of waking them up, they're becoming androids. I remember, when the Android cell phone came out, and I was already in my anti-cell phone state of consciousness, which a lot of people didn't understand. But it's like, sure seems that they're coming out with a whole lot of androids right as people are starting to really reflect the zombie apocalypse android mentality. And I mentioned the other day, I mean, talk about synchronicity. I mentioned the other day that in the modern day and age, the only connection between myself and others is me buying something, an act of commerce. Um, it's just the reality of this day and age. I mean, Portland was never all that, but there was a time where you might see some hippie types gathering together and hanging out, and maybe that would be interesting or someone interesting to talk to, kind of like a homeless person who's not just foaming at the mouth, but being a real human, talking about real things. And there's times in which I've met some interesting people in Portland, and some people. I also want to do a shout out to Eli Ritchie and a thank you to him. And there's other people out there that have also been good to me over the years. I mentioned recently that I was able to get my car repaired thanks to some help. I also was able to, and I'm saving this in the box because I am savoring the experience. This is my brand new computer, right? The one that I'm using right now is the one that I have been using. But this computer is going to allow me to do some things in which some functions here have broken down. And maybe I'll have two working computers after I fix this screen. But this is something that I also picked up a 2-year warranty for, which costs $45. So altogether, looking at $311 investment. I also see a lot in numerology with regards to threes and ones. So I've had to deal with some serious shit by not being another robot. And the universe has a way of creating balance in my own life through elements of the audience, past, present, and future. And that's what keeps me going and realizing where my work is and what it is, and the need for a lot more work to go from video to creating a book. And that's not easy, especially when some of us are perfectionists and think that we have to have a certain level of grammar ability or ability in writing. The greater reality is telling a authentic story, especially a story like no other, or writing an autobiography, how we rose above certain things. Also having an awareness that even though that there are some of you that appreciate deeper levels of sharing, the average audience member on YouTube is going to be a reflection of the programming of this world. And I've had to come to terms with that in recent years, in recent months. And it just accelerates. No matter what, no matter how much I try, and no matter how much I try to improve the production quality, there's going to be a certain level of opposition to anything that I say. Or when I present a truth that goes against a certain level of programming that people want to defend. Now Imagine how much sense it would make to see someone defend their house from firefighters. They're trying to stop the fire and protect their home. There's something about this knowledge that is about protecting one's soul. And not everyone agrees that there even is a war for their soul, or that it operates in certain ways to drive them towards certain evil directions, to program them to have no empathy. But the greater reality is, that's one of the biggest conversations with regards to spirituality in today's day and age, not becoming another Borg mind, another person that is a member of the zombie apocalypse. There's a lot of people out there like to point their friggin' finger and call them the sheeple without acknowledging elements of their own psychology, that is believing what media sources are telling them. And now it's gotten to a point where it's a mad science. It's a mad science. Like there could be a huge website like the Drudge Report that people think is legitimate. And they might even go out and promote the Drudge Report to others and say, hey, go check out this website. It's great. Without realizing that websites like that and Infowars.com, Alex Jones, Jeff Rentz, are in this web of hatred that uses little bits of truth and then sends them in these strange directions. Even Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are servants of an elite that we don't see. I believe that. But if people could literally understand that that's where I'm coming from, and it's not being based in hate towards Russians or hate towards Chinese or hate towards Trump, not hate at all, but a deeper understanding how these societies are under control. For example, I don't have anything against Chinese people or Russians. In fact, I have very much an affinity for ancient Chinese history, cooking, art, martial arts, music, architecture. I haven't even studied their practices of gardening. I know that Shinto in Japan is a spiritual worldview that's very different than the Abrahamic religions that we are mostly familiar with in this culture. So I have a strong affinity for Asian cultures on a authentic level and see how they have actually been in a way taken over by this world order system long ago. How the industrialists long ago have invaded through forms of trade that were then kind of turned on the actual countrymen. And in the end, you have what we have now. But that is not to then make an excuse for China and Russia to also then have bases around the world, some of which might threaten some of us. There's a song, We Didn't Start the Fire, by Billy Joel. And with regards to that, as he's going down the line of all these crazy things that are taking place in the world, it's like we have that spirit now, some of us. Like, we didn't start the fire. We're not to blame for some of us being in certain situations or the way that things were, or maybe the history of slavery. But I'll tell you what, we are responsible for the things that are taking place right now. There's a lot of people, for example, with regards to African Americans and slaves. Oh, we're not responsible for that. And there's actually an argument to be made for that. But are people responsible for their silence today as their peers travel overseas? Multiple races, by the way, can't just blame on white supremacy when you have multiple races going overseas to stomp on the face of the Middle East. That is anti-themism. And that's also the magic of programs and channels like this, that I have an ability to analyze something and even give original terms to something and stand alone in a world where it's a bunch of memes where people are standing together and they're trending upon commonly used terms. We have a perverted internet that wants to program us, to program our audience in order to become successful. And I say, no way, Jose, homie, don't play that. The universe will continue to show me its balance by providing me with the things that I need so I don't have to stoop to such levels. I will be more active throughout the year over at outsidethebox.vhx.tv as we move into spring and the snow begins to melt more. I am going to be creating more content. The advantage of having something like that, especially as things heat up geopolitically, is that there are certain things that are going to be best served to the audience over there behind the pay site. Also, for privacy reasons, certain things shouldn't straight up be put out on YouTube. And I've already seen signs of China's influence over this medium. They don't always have it jacked up all the way. I think they like to encourage people to dabble in World War III theories and conspiracies. If it amplifies fear, they try to use that to their advantage. But if you touch upon something that's real, and try to show the wizard behind the Oz, maybe mention a few names, maybe get into how certain corporations in the United States or Western countries assisted other particular corporations or organizations in either China, Russia, North Korea, or other nations that are allied with those nations, like Myanmar, things of that nature, also known as Burma. And there's been a lot of massacring there of not only Buddhists, but Muslims, and Myanmar is allied with China. And so, in a lot of indirect ways, US imperialism and the US spread of its bases and its influence, and through controlling both sides, the world is a much more dangerous place. This is why, in the end, I'm not actually afraid of the entire grid going down. What's going to be a greater concern is when elements of the grid go down, but it's actually manipulation, kind of like what we're seeing with Venezuela. And I'm concerned that if we saw something like that, that we would see a rise, the next level of the grid, which would include 5G, but some sort of dystopian ethno-state nightmare where computers, for example, might be notifying people that are users of certain platforms that they need to then go to a certain sector because things are in chaos. So they need to go to a safe space. And it may be a trick or a trap. I think there's other forms of traps that are awaiting the American people. We talk about human trafficking in the future and the involvement of foreign nation states. You think about the ability that they already have to track people by their cell phones. Your cell phones don't have to necessarily work or be receiving service for those cell phones to basically be a tracking device. There was a video that I showed several years ago on this channel, a bunch of women that were in a mall and they were responding to some sort of a Christmas sale, like a Black Friday type deal. So it's like the Walmart thing where everybody was rushing and grabbing, but it was more like a Victoria Secret thing where all these women are rushing and grabbing to get themselves a new pair of silk panties. And I thought to myself, what a wonderful trap. What a horrific trap if a foreign government or someone else was to dupe people that were materialistic zombie apocalypse mind slaves, right? Maybe they would be looking into their little smartphone tracking device, being told there's a great sale somewhere. Great sale, ladies. Come on down to Macy's or something. And just the whole act of not only that, but the cell phone and the smartphone and social media being used for flash mobs and these street fights. But just the idea of people coming down, right, for one purpose or another, as a result of being commanded down through a phone. And the repercussions for people that could be duped without them knowing the true agenda, why they're being told to come down to it. Maybe free tickets. Hey, come on down, free tickets. And also, could there be some sort of element of social media that's still working yet controlled during a time of collapse? The answer is yes. Yes, there can be an economic collapse while the grid is still up. Okay, that holds for a dangerous precedent for women. Okay, so picture an economic collapse, but there's still a grid. So people are rushing around doing unthinkable things for money and to women. And in the end, if these things come to fruition, how many are you going to be able to say, Alex Ansary wasn't the only one that talked about this? There was also, no, there's not. There are people that actually get off on things that are so graphic sexually that are allegedly taking place in the present that there almost seems to be a sick obsession with people that have um, behaviors promoting fake news regarding elements of the current human trafficking epidemic. Okay, so there's elements of that's real, and there's elements that they will try to use for their own propaganda against people that may be against Donald Trump, right? We see examples of this in Portland and with people involved in protests there. Anyone honestly concerned with human trafficking and the future would be concerned with the direction this economy is going and the blank check for the military industrial complex. And so for someone to be against human trafficking, but someone to be for unlimited military spending and bombing Afghanistan back to the Stone Age and other things that are morally wrong, like those things go against a safe society in the end. And so we're programmed in this day and age to have no common sense regarding values, karma, what goes around comes around. And when I'm out in the real world, especially if I don't shave, they're making sure I'm not stealing stuff. I was at one Walmart and one lady was making sure that I didn't like do a quick grab for the laptop. I talk about the automated responses. I mentioned the other day that a young lady at some sort of it was a Wendy's, said, wait before the numbers pop up before you stick it in. She's talking about the debit card, by the way. So it's like at one point it becomes like the new, would you like paper or plastic? It's become our new, would you like fries with that? The new type of like, I'm not actually going to acknowledge the fact that you're here and you're being polite. I'm just going to be like complete robot. So today I go down to the local Walmart and I'm there and they're having a little conversation. It takes about 10 seconds to realize I'm right next to them waiting. It's like, oh, sir, can we help you? It's like, I'm not even going to bother them with, having to sell me the computer or any information. It's like that one right there. And so he rings it up and I pull out my card, but I'm not putting it in yet. And she's already on it. She's already, wait till she sticks it in, or wait till the numbers come up. And John, the guy who's selling me the computer, he's like, huh? And he's like, oh, I was just telling you, wait to stick it in. And at this point, I'm smiling. I'm laughing inside, really. I am bothering to laugh at her, make eye contact with her. It's just like I was just talking about this with my YouTube audience. And so, a lot of you don't understand that it's not just computers that are programmed. It's people. Only we should allow ourselves to be programmed with things that are anti-human, so anti-spiritual, so unconscious. This is something that I'm very grateful to have. I want to thank those of you that have supported my work, that have made this possible, because this is an example. I'm going to try to wrap up here. We have a beautiful day outside, by the way. Been a lot of chemtrailing, not at the moment today. Like I said, there's a lot more blue skies here in Colorado. It's just that socially it's in the dark ages. And so as some of you may complain about your environments, admit to yourself honestly why you live on the West Coast and why you remain. And just hold that truth within and find the goodness within that. Find the positivity within your own life, within your community, and acknowledge what it is that you do like about your environment and what you do like about some people in your area, and acknowledge what does actually hold you back from living in the woods. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't. I'm saying that we should come to a state of peace of mind with our decisions and why we do what we do. The grass is always greener on the other side in the mindset of the one who is not fully conscious. The one who has attained a level of consciousness realizes that everything is as it needs to be. I realized that it wasn't for me to go to California last year and have a great time. It's like I did achieve what I wanted to. I got a chance to see it before it breaks off into the sea. I mean, that was the whole goal. And now all this conversation about California, California, California. There's a lot of narcissism regarding all things California and Californians. It's extreme narcissism on steroids. Just got to say, the world does not revolve around California and Californians or Californians. Nor does it revolve around Portlanders. That's why I had to get away from Portlanders. It doesn't revolve around the actions in DC. It doesn't revolve around the actions of the people of Afghanistan. And by the way, they have nothing to do with the decisions of the Taliban, which basically took those people over. And now we live in a day and age where the U.S. is in talks with the people that took the Afghan people over. I mean, at some point, the people got to figure out what's going on and understand there's like a blueprint to take over all these different people around the world, right? We have to resist the programming. And the programming is biological. There's a lot of people out there. It's amazing how many people I've met over 60 that are totally like evil. And I don't understand that because I perceive someone to be at risk for dying of natural causes after 70. And in some cases, it's lowered in today's day and age with some people's personal habits, diet, smoking, alcoholism, internet addiction, drinking and driving, other additional risks. People ranting about wars in the street, civil war, homicide. And these people are potentially their last 10 years or 15 years. And it's like their whole lifetime, right, has never shown them the left right paradigm. Now there's so many people that are so caught up in this that their last years on earth in these bodies are spent either trolling or living a nightmare. And it's like I've met a lot of unconscious people in recent years. And I think that anyone who is potentially in their last 10 or 20 years of life should be on the spiritual path, should be really investigating concepts like there is no tomorrow. And for some of them in that body, there's no guarantee. There's less tomorrows for them by the day, literally. So there's no logic to me spiritually in the idea of someone being at a certain age, closer to death, and being so bitter, so angry, so resentful. And there's something I suspect maybe that they know that they are heading on their way back to this type of a sick world. And this is some sort of a hell realm to where you don't really have what's coming to you until you pass over. And so there may be a great anger that some of these men have and some of these women have because they were never good people. And so now they've lost their beauty, some of them, they've lost their wealth. And so they're not looking at the afterlife of something where there's positive karma coming back to them. They're angrier and angrier as they get sicker because all their life they've hurt others and maybe only cared about themselves. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about you, but I don't know you. This actually fits a greater percentage of our population than anyone would actually admit. And so there's a lot of fear that some people have at a certain level of age, and they may even stoop to the level of being so afraid of death that they give their last dime to the healthcare system, which might even help them die faster. So, as I progress in the ages, I'm also going to pioneer commentary about aging gracefully without fear of death. Also, recounting as I grow older how many people I felt hated me that were of older age, that were stuck in their old ways of thinking, but also those senior citizens that loved me. They opened up their homes to me back in the day in Portland, Oregon during the Bush years. Wasn't a lot of them, there were a few. And during the Obama years. It's been many years since people have opened up their home to me and treated me as that grandson they never had. Here in Colorado, it feels like a confrontation energetically that I'm even here. So I realized that I was born into hell. And I realized that there is no common sense for any of us to try to hold on to hell as long as possible. I'm going to hold on to hell. I'm so afraid of what's going to lie beyond hell. And it's like, that's the wisdom that comes with age. We can have like a nice experience with someone or get something materialistic or get a little bit more in shape where he may not have felt as much in shape a few months ago. But that's not there for us to then become obsessive with the body and the body's desires and all things that get us off. But to maintain this vehicle so we can have the best experience. Like, okay, I'm going to try to maintain this computer, but part of maintaining this platform is to have working gear so that you can have a positive viewing experience and listening experience. And so the microphones should probably work with this. Right now I'm going off the laptop. That's an idea of a means to an end, but in no way do I want to merge with that machine. In no way do I want a biological USB thing that I can just go, yeah, put on the virtual reality headset and just, yeah. I just want to use it as a tool to have a more effective experience sharing truth with you. That's why I'm describing keeping the body clean and healthy. Some people actually get into bodybuilding and modeling and they start worshiping flesh and the flesh of others. And they are the furthest thing from a conscious person. What I'm attempting to do in my own life is achieve a sense of balance that I have never seen projected or taught to me by any man at all. And that's not to disrespect those men in my life that have been inspirations, and I can count them on less than one hand. And most of them are no longer inspirations. The few that do remain, right? It's not about the cult of personality, and in some cases it was, especially with the A man. But as I grow older, it's about the charisma and the dynamic human spirit. As you've also heard this quote before, that refuses to submit, but another way of saying it, a dynamic human spirit that's versatile, that's able to create things out of thin air. And I don't necessarily want to use the word godlike, but there is something that is ultra human beyond the lower state of human that's able to create. And in hindsight, as I sit here on the 3-year anniversary, I've been able to generate my own support, even though, right, there's a lot of people that don't like the things that I say. I've been able to keep going. I've been able to see outside the YouTube box. I've been able to escape a wage slave reality. I've been able to adapt to a certain level of poverty. I've been able to build a certain level of patience. I've needed a new computer for a while, and it's only recently in which it felt like the perfect time of the year and season and cycle to get something that's specifically used for work purposes, writing a book, editing video, something that's used to continue to hone my craft, expand my websites, and reach out beyond the world of YouTube to the literary world as time goes on. I live during a day and age in which people like me have tools to express their talents to elements of the world without actually being there. And we have literally been unfortunate on a collective level programmed to take things for granted, to not have the gratitude for those things, to not recognize those things. And so, years ago, people would speculate on how they would censor the truth. And what they really did, like a bomb went off, what they really did is drop this explosion of fake news and too much stimuli to distract. And if you notice, there's advertisements sometimes for some of the content, but if you look around, there's a lot more content for free that they used to charge for. And on one level, right, they can make money by running ads. On another level, there is this vested interest in keeping people watching, keeping people glued to the screens, keeping people entertained, you know. And you can also see how when something is new, it has this extreme value to it that will drop years later once everybody has it. Like the CD player at one point was $1,000 in the 1980s, you know, a symbol of status, something to impress the chicks with, I guess. And then you fast forward to today's day and age, and a CD player like that is no longer as hip. But there are current things that have replaced it for the idea of status symbols, which includes a dude with a big old home and things of that nature. The people that ride around in certain types of cars because they understand base animal human psychology, although they may think that that's evolved. They may not have really an opinion on the evolution or regression of the human species. They, as a monkey man or monkey woman, may be using their Ferrari or their Maserati or their something else as they look at me in my fancy wagon. This represents something along with my ring, as they use it to manipulate others or get something from others as they project an image. So, in this world, we are living out the projections of something that came before this. But it's important to understand that we do have the free will to change the course. But who is the I, the true identity? Is it me in this body? Is it this name? Or is it something more involved, deeper than the flesh, than the blood? I think we live in a day and age where people don't know what is up and what is down and what is all around. And this is a time of recentering. This is a time of deprogramming. So, in conclusion, thinking for yourself and not being programmed is not just watching what's being recommended by YouTube. It's knowing what to research, having a attention span that doesn't forget things so easily that are of importance, not letting Google, which is really incrementally more and more being controlled by China as we're seeing. And so this is a wake up call to people that may have been living in a programmed state of mind since the internet came about in recent years. From what's being presented to the types of websites that people go to, people may unconsciously be making decisions based on what gives them instantaneous gratification and pleasure, not necessarily what's right for them. You need to be making the decision about what's right for you. It's not so much how tasty that fast food item may go down day in and day out, right? Everything in moderation. It's not everything is not about how pleasurable it is, how entertaining it is. So then how do we apply that same concept of wanting to eat healthy food at the buffet of life? We have so many options, staying away from the junk food, eating something healthier, like maybe some healthier ahi or some free range beef. I'm not going to apologize to the vegans. Maybe some quinoa, maybe some organic salad with some sesame seeds, and some Bragg's amino acids, something healthy. Stay away from the fast food. How do you apply that to YouTube and the internet and how you're interacting with the world? So that's my challenge to you. I always want to see these videos, especially nowadays, as something that is helping you achieve higher consciousness, as it helps me in this talk therapy. Talk about these things with the only group of people that I know of that are open to such concepts. They're not, even if you may think so. Open to these concepts down the street at the church. They're not. Open to these concepts or ideas at the local city council. They're not. Open to these ideas or concepts up the street in the upper neighborhood. They're not in or supported. This is a fallen world. And I'm not going to let the pressure of this fallen world pressure me into being silent about the things that matter. I'm going to continue. And I want to thank you for your support. Till next time, I'm Alex Ansary reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within.